the fourth quarterly results when it comes to South Africa's indebtedness, showing a very, very bleak picture. We're overburdened and we're over indebted. South Africans, particularly middle income households, need a 71% of the after-tax income just to service debt. It's the worst levels in 10 years. And it's the higher income earners. It's those who are quite comfortably in a middle income bracket, those of 35,000 and above. Debt repayments now consuming up to 85% of take-home pay. And there are a couple of drivers. One of them is vehicle finance. Consumers are increasingly taking 8 to 10 year car loans instead of the traditional 5 to 6. Many people underestimate the full cost of their car ownership. It's the insurance, it's the fuel, it's the maintenance, the licensing fees. Personal loans also up. 96% of owned indebted consumers have personal loans. But there's also another worrying factor, is that the growing presence of gambling that we're seeing on people's bank statements. DebtBusters describing debt related to gambling as reaching epidemic levels. Joining me on the line is Benay Sager, executive head of DebtBusters. Good morning, Benay. Really appreciate your time. 70% of take-home pay going to debt is staggering. What does this mean for households and how we survive month to month?
Yeah, thanks for having us on the show. And what a topic to start the morning with. It's a tough one.
Yeah.
I think it's an important one for us to talk about. I think there's a few factors here. One is we have to look at the debt levels in context of the income levels. I think we also state the income levels have not risen as much as inflation and other things. And I think what's happening is a lot of households are being pushed to, in a way, borrow to make ends meet. And I think that 71%, it's quite a frightening number for us. We don't like it to be that high. We certainly would like to see that much, much lower. But that's also a factor of the nature of the debt. I think, as you rightfully said, almost 100% of the people who applied for debt counseling with DebtBusters had a personal loan. That loan, there's a big range for it. Some of it is as small as 10,000 Rand, but some cases up to 250,000 Rand. And all of those come with really high interest rates. And that's really what's pushing us to have to spend 71% of take-home pay. And, that's the one we have to deal with. But I think if incomes increase and, if some of our other habits also change, we can probably make a dent on that 71% to bring it down.
You mentioned something that, look, a car is an investment, but a car brings a lot of things. It brings access, it brings freedom of movement. But you also describe vehicle finance, cars now being South Africa's gateway debt for middle-class South Africans.
Yeah, I would actually be cautious of calling a car an investment. It's an investment in the sense that it's not an appreciating asset. It's a depreciating asset. We buy it because we need it to get around to work. It opens up, as you rightfully said, opportunities for us. It cuts down on our travel time. Maybe not this morning in Cape Town traffic, but let's just say that does happen. But it brings the convenience to us, and I think it's quite an important status symbol for saying I have arrived. I'm totally on board with that. I think what we're seeing with particularly some of our young people is they're stretching themselves too much, particularly the ages of 25 to 35. They're signing up to vehicles finance agreements that are probably just beyond their reach. And I would urge them to really factor in that you are going to have to spend some money on the maintenance of that car. There will be a tire burst, or you will need to replace your tires. You will need insurance. You will need petrol. Factor in all of those things when you're committing a certain portion of your salary to the vehicle. And I think what we've seen is, particularly for middle income bands, it's taken up a higher proportion of their debt pile than we would like to see. So I agree, totally essential. Just watch out for how long you're signing up yourself for, but also the hidden expenses.
Yeah. There's something that I've seen, look, with the advent of social media and instant communication, some of the marketing strategies for sales reps on TikTok. I have seen sales reps of the motor dealership saying, let me know your income and I will tailor, or I'll give you a ballpark figure of how you can get this new Polo or this new Toyota or whatever brand is associated with those vehicles. And then people will respond, my take home is 15. And then you have these sales reps legitimately saying, well, this is what we could work out for you. And then I'm thinking to myself, you wanting to buy a car with a take-home of only 15,000 Rand? Are you forgetting petrol? Are you forgetting maintenance? Are you forgetting insurance? Look, we all have to hustle, including the sales reps, but that's just some seriously worrying financial advice there. Offering someone a deal on a take-home income of as little as 15,000 Rand.
Well, I think it's as the public transport hopefully picks up in terms of reliability. Maybe that will be a viable option for some people, as you say. But there's also something else here at play. I'm glad you mentioned this, because we also advise people, regardless of whether you're paying for a vehicle or vehicle and a house or vehicle and a house or in a personal loan, whatever the combination is, what you're paying back on a monthly basis, your debt repayments should not really exceed 30% of your take-home pay, a total. And I think this is generally not, I know this is not the same advice as you may get from your bank. They'll tell you, it's okay to spend up to 30% of your take-home pay just on your mortgage alone. But I think history tells us, especially over the COVID times of what happened, and when interest rates go the other way, when they go up, that many of the people who would stretch themselves too far just cannot cope because they wouldn't have built any buffer. So I think I'm glad you mentioned this. We have to, I think, apply these kind of limits to our own incomes. Yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned it's quite a sobering conversation to have just after 7 o'clock this morning. But the data that we get around the proliferation of gambling, particularly online sports gambling, after 7 o'clock, many people would have already placed their first bets on a sporting platform. Just how is online betting eating into people's income, and how is it reflecting in their over-indebtedness?
Yeah, I think we're seeing. I mean, numbers are well known, not by us, but I'm sure you would have read on this show about the total amount that South Africans are wagering with online betting houses in a year. I think the numbers are, amounts are astounding. What the pattern that we see is twofold. One is that small amounts, 500, 600 Rand, over, especially in the run-up to payday, I think with the hope of winning big, and often that doesn't result. That's one. But what also gets masks there is every time you put money into online betting apps, you also get charged by your bank handsomely. And there's also these extra charges. And I think the banks are probably doing it to actually, ironically, deter people from using these apps often, but it doesn't seem to really be working. So we see a lot of that. It's not uncommon for us to see over like 2 to 3 month period when we look at bank statements that a total of 15 to 20,000 Rand would have been pushed into these apps, and the payouts would be minuscule compared to that. So that's one where we see it. And the second one is I believe and I fear that a certain segment of our population actually believes that gambling is a source of income. And I think this is, I don't know how we landed with that, but they, like when we run surveys, some, which came up as number 3 or number 4 source of income for people, they legitimately believe that it's gambling. And I think we've got to quickly move ourselves away from that belief, because in the long term, I mean, we will never win in gambling.
Benay, really appreciate your time. Benay Sager, Executive Head at DebtBusters.